Okay, so you know that feeling, right, when you come across something super intricate and complex. You just want to get to the heart of it. You want the distilled version, like
Hmm.
the essential understanding,
Yeah.
without having to wade through all the complexities and the details.
Right.
That's exactly what we're going to be doing with you today.
I love it.
So you flagged this sci-fi story, Veil of the Hidden Stars,
Hmm.
and it's it's really interesting because it kind of throws a curveball into the whole alien invasion trope.
Yeah.
It's not your typical alien invasion
Yeah,
story.
it definitely flips the script.
Yeah, so we're going to really kind of unpack this together and try to get under the hood of this narrative.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you shared this really fascinating text with me, set in 3025.
Right.
And humanity's first contact with aliens is not a friendly handshake.
Right.
It's a hostile takeover.
Yeah, not the welcome wagon we were hoping for, right?
No, not at all. And then, the story introduces this protector race
Yeah.
that we never knew existed.
Yeah. So that's what we're going to dive into today. We're going to unpack those pivotal moments, the big reveals and the implications of this narrative
Right.
for humanity and for our understanding of, our place in the universe and all of that.
Sure, sure.
And we want to leave you with a clear sense of how intricate this story is and really hit those aha moments without you feeling like you just, slogged through a really long synopsis of a book.
Right. Yeah.
So let's dive in to the arrival of these aliens. And it's unsettling because it doesn't kick off with, big lasers and explosions.
It doesn't,
It's
right?
subtle, right?
Yeah, it is. And that's what's so effective about it. Instead of, immediate destruction and chaos, the author really takes the time to cultivate this sense of unease,
Right.
in early 3025.
Yeah.
And so we have these very strange, almost imperceptible occurrences, satellite glitches, subtle gravitational anomalies,
Right.
things that would maybe go unnoticed by most people. But they're definitely there.
Yeah, it's almost like a hush
It is.
before the storm, right? Like the,
Mm.
the calm before the storm.
Yeah, like the quiet before the big event,
Yeah. And it's a clever way to kind of subvert those typical invasion narratives.
Yeah, definitely.
It really is.
Yeah.
So when the ships do show up, it's all the more impactful.
Exactly.
And the way that they're described, these
Mhm.
ships,
Yeah.
immense, jagged, asymmetrical,
Right.
almost like ancient leviathans, the author says.
Right.
That really gives you a sense of something that's so far removed from our understanding of spacecraft.
It does, and that's a great point. I think that design choice is really fascinating because it deviates so much from our human understanding of, aerodynamic efficiency
Right.
and streamlined design. So it really suggests a completely different approach to interstellar travel.
Yeah.
Maybe even integrating, biological elements into their vessels. And it really hints at a civilization with priorities and understandings of physics that are just so far beyond our own.
It makes you think, right? Like what kind of technology would allow them to,
Right.
traverse the vast distances of space in ships
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And then there's this dark energy that surrounds them
Yeah.
with this bending of reality.
Yeah.
It's not just their physical presence that's threatening.
I
It's like
see.
they're warping
They are.
space-time around
Yeah.
them.
Like a localized space-time distortion.
Right.
Something we can't even really comprehend with our current physics.
Right. And it really adds this layer of almost supernatural dread to their arrival.
It does.
You know?
Absolutely.
Like they're not just technologically superior,
Yeah.
they're fundamentally different
Right.
from us.
Alien.
Yeah. And then the first attacks these huge tidal waves
Yeah.
caused by their landings in the ocean.
Right. Just a raw display of power.
Yeah.
Completely indifferent to human infrastructure and life on the planet.
Yeah, and then we're introduced to the biomechanical soldiers, right?
Huh.
This grotesque fusion of organic material and
Right.
alien tech,
Yeah.
and they're relentless.
Like living weapons.
Yeah, and what struck me is that the attack pattern is not focused. They're not going after military targets or
No.
seats of power.
Right.
It seems random.
Yeah, it does. And that almost makes it more terrifying.
Yeah.
Because it keeps humanity guessing.
Right.
Nobody can predict where the next strike is going to hit.
Right.
And he just maximizes the terror and the panic.
It's a very effective tactic.
Yes, very effective.
Yeah, and the book really emphasizes how, despite all of our advancements, we have cybernetic soldiers and drones and AI warships.
Right.
We're just completely unprepared.
Yeah, all that technology, all that firepower, and it can't even scratch the surface of these invaders.
It's a very sobering thought.
Yeah.
It makes you think about, are we really as advanced as we think we are? Or is our understanding of warfare just completely inadequate
It might be, yeah.
against a truly, alien adversary?
Yeah.
And then just when things seem hopeless,
Right.
we have this mysterious intervention.
Yeah, the hidden ones.
Yeah, who are they? Why do they show up at this point in the story?
Yeah, it's such a great question, and they're introduced during this desperate, night raid, and it's completely unexpected. And they're immediately set apart from both the human soldiers and the initial invaders by their description.
Yeah, definitely not who you expect to show up in the middle of a battle.
No,
Right?
yeah.
They're described as tall humanoid with this iridescent skin, elongated silver eyes.
Otherworldly.
Yeah.
For sure.
Definitely otherworldly. And their armor, it's sleek, metallic, but it seems to shift and breathe almost as if it's organic.
Right. That living armor detail is fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, what did you make of that?
Well, it makes me think that their technology might be symbiotic,
Right.
with their biology in a way that we can't even imagine. And then there's their fighting style.
Right.
It's fluid, it's graceful, they have advanced weaponry, incredibly precise targeting.
Right.
And they seem to really take care to avoid civilian casualties.
Yeah, and that's in stark contrast to the just brutal efficiency of the first invaders.
Exactly.
And the book mentions that the enemy is visibly uneasy when the hidden ones arrive,
Right, yeah.
which suggests that these hidden ones are a known threat.
Right, they're not just some random group that showed up.
Yeah, like they weren't expecting these guys
Right.
at all.
It wasn't part of the plan.
And then reports of these mysterious protectors start spreading across the globe,
Yeah.
silently aiding humanity.
Right.
Why the secrecy? What's their history with Earth?
Yeah, big questions.
And this all kind of culminates in this stunning revelation
Yes.
during a battle in the ruins of New York City.
Yes, one of the most pivotal points in the story.
So we have this huge battle taking place,
Right.
and then a massive ship arrives.
Right, it comes through a rift in the sky.
Yeah, and it's adorned with these strange symbols.
Right.
And it's such a classic sci-fi trope.
It is.
Right? But the context here makes it so much more effective.
Right, it really elevates it to a whole new level.
Yeah, and then Zha'lar appears.
Right.
And he's even taller than the hidden ones.
Yeah.
He has translucent blue skin,
Yeah.
these intensely glowing eyes,
Yeah.
clearly someone very important.
Right.
And he makes this announcement. He says, "We, the hidden ones, are not strangers to this world. We have walked among you for millennia.
Right.
We are not invaders, but guardians."
Huge reveal.
What was your reaction when you read that?
Oh my gosh, just the audacity and the scope of that statement, to think that for millennia they've been here.
Yeah, it really reframes human history.
It does, completely.
It suggests this unseen hand
Yeah.
guiding events,
Yeah.
For who knows how long.
For who knows how long.
And then he goes on to explain that their mission is to protect Earth from this recurring threat,
Right.
implying that this current invasion is not an isolated incident.
Right, the first and only.
And then he reveals their true identity.
Right.
The Zha'lar.
The Zha'lar survivors of a destroyed empire.
Yeah.
They sought refuge on Earth, and they've been secretly defending it all this time, waiting for the return of these aggressors.
It's like a massive retcon of our past,
It is.
but it explains the secrecy.
It does, yeah.
So they weren't just hiding, they were biding their time. They were strategically, positioned
Right.
for
That
it.
plan. Yeah, so with this revelation, how does the nature of the conflict change?
Well, I imagine that the initial reaction from humanity was a mix of disbelief
Right.
and probably relief.
Yeah, a glimmer of hope.
Yeah, for sure. A little bit of hope in there.
And then they start to cooperate with the Zha'lar,
Right,
albeit, maybe a little uneasily at first.
right. Can you imagine just finding out that this other species has been living among you for millennia?
Yeah.
It would be a little unsettling.
Yeah, it would definitely change your worldview.
Right.
So we find out about the hostile alien race, the Earthayal. Right.
And their motivations. And they're not just conquerors. They're almost like a planetary parasite.
They are.
They consume worlds for energy.
Right.
And Earth, with all of its, vibrant life and biosphere, is just their next meal.
It's a buffet for them.
It is. And this makes you think about different types of threats, right? Like an advanced alien civilization might not just want our territory
Right.
or our resources. They might be driven by these fundamental biological imperatives.
Right. It's about survival for them.
Yeah.
They have to consume to survive.
And that puts them at odds with,
with every other living thing
Yeah.
in the galaxy.
So it's a very different type of conflict that we're used to thinking about.
Yeah, and it makes them even more terrifying in a way.
Right.
Because it's not just about greed or conquest.
Right.
It's about their very survival.
Yeah.
So they're going to be relentless.
So the war escalates.
It does.
Right?
Yeah.
We have these battles in Earth's cities. We have Tuaran ships fighting these huge Earthale motherships.
Mm-hmm. Right. And it becomes clear that despite their advanced technology,
Right.
the Zha'lar are not invincible.
Yeah, they're not a Deus Ex Machina. They're not just going to swoop in and save the day.
Right.
They're vulnerable. They can be hurt. They can be killed.
And this raises the stakes,
It does for everyone.
Yeah, so they have to come up with a desperate plan
They do.
to end this war.
Right.
And the plan is to strike at the Earthale core.
Right. High risk, high reward.
Yeah. Classic. Classic. And Zha'lar steps forward.
He does.
And he says, I will lead the charge,
Right.
but I will not survive this battle.
So powerful.
And that line just really kind of sums up
It does.
the weight of their sacrifice,
And it really...
their commitment to Earth.
he's not just a leader in that moment.
Right.
He represents the sacrifices of his people
Yeah.
over countless generations.
So they launch this final assault on the Earthale mothership.
Right.
And Zha'lar detonates the core from within.
Right.
It's a very tragic but heroic.
End to the conflict.
The ultimate sacrifice for the greater good.
So the Earthale are gone. Earth is saved, but at a huge cost.
Right.
It's not a straightforward happy ending.
No.
And I think that makes the story even more powerful.
I agree.
So looking back on this deep dive into Veil of the Hidden Stars,
Yeah.
we've seen this very unsettling alien arrival.
Right.
The surprising revelation of these protectors,
Right.
Tlarin,
Right.
and the just terrifying parasitic nature of the Earthale,
Right.
and this selfless sacrifice that ensures humanity's survival.
Yes.
So you now have a really solid understanding of this intricate story.
You do.
And I think you're ready to discuss all the surprising twists and turns and the underlying themes.
Absolutely. And it really makes you think, if humanity were to ever face a true extraterrestrial threat,
Right.
what unexpected allies might we find?
Right.
Or what unknown histories might actually determine our fate?
Yeah, it really makes you wonder about all the forces that could be at play that we're just not aware of.
Absolutely.
So thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Veil of the Hidden Stars.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating story, and it really gives us a lot to think about.
It does.
So until next time,
Take care.
stay curious.